Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. You know, I'm working on an article, and it just keeps becoming so much more extensive as more information pours in. More information keeps coming to me, and the information that's coming to me right now goes back 10, 20, 25 years and confirms everything that I've said and everything that I've been doing. It confirms how righteous everything I've been trying to do has been and is, and how right on it is. And for that, I've been taking a lot of heat. I've got a lot of heat here on this blog TV. I've got a lot of trolls that keep coming in that want to put me down. Well, Clay doesn't know what he's talking about. Clay's he's just out for money. He just, you know, and then you also get the people. Remember, I wrote a book on Christian identity, and suddenly the Christian identity people came out of the woodwork. Oh, you know, Clay wants to legalize marijuana. He wants to smoke dope. He wants to do this. We need to go out and kill all the blacks. We need to kill all the Jews. We need to kill all the Mexicans. No, that makes you just as evil as the people that want to kill us. No, that's New World Order, divide and conquer. And where's it coming from, folks? Veterans Today just did an investigation. They said, and this is Gordon Duff that's saying this, an unclassified version of the software used by the FBI has allowed Veterans Today to track the IP addresses of a group of what appear to be hate mongers and racists whose rhetoric borders on terrorist extremism. What we found was astounding. In one case, an individual using the email address "You dirty screwing Jews," was traced to the computer of the head of the largest Jewish defense organization. That would be the ADL, or Southern Poverty Law. Others posting copyright materials without permission on extremist sites and posting comments filled with racist threats were traced to homes and public buildings in Tel Aviv, or to members of Washington lobbying groups tied to Israel. Most noticeable, though the message is primitive, the syntax is flawless and often elegant. Spelling and punctuation are spot on. Veterans Today editor Jim Dean said, "We spend hours each week, time we could spend helping veterans, cleaning this garbage off our website. All of it is blatant and amateurish." A good friend who works for the Anti-Defamation League, an organization headed by Abe Foxman, told me that hundreds have been recruited here in the U.S. and more in Israel, whose job it is to seed anti-Semitic materials into websites that are critical of Israel's apartheid policies. They openly joke about how the Nazi and white supremacist websites have been theirs for years. Now, for decades, no one's met a real person behind the supposed skinhead or Nazi websites. The last Nazi parade had 8 participants, yet hundreds of anonymous screen names continually posted bizarre and dated racist rhetoric used in language learned from popular TV programs. It didn't take long to get to the bottom of this. Back in during the 1980s, organizations like Stormfront.org were used by the FBI to track what they believed to be domestic terror groups. As 90s came to a close, the militias disbanded. Most notorious of all, the Michigan militia claimed they were no longer needed since their chosen candidate, George Bush, had assumed the presidency. The chosen candidate of the white supremacists and anti-Semites had, according to many militia leaders, assumed power, and Americans were safe from government intrusion, wiretapping, illegal searches, and new federal agencies imposing more restrictions. Never has a group been so wrong, as we all know only too well today. As the FBI moved aside, the groups claiming to protect Americans of the Jewish faith from persecution stepped in. Their intent was something else. They saw initial filtration of the white supremacist internet groups as a broad opportunity to instill cohesion within the Jewish community by manufacturing a threat, much as Hitler done when he blamed the Jews for Germany's downfall in World War I. Of course, there was no need for a Nazi resistance when the Bush administration itself exceeded even the wildest expectations of any right-wing group. Typical rhetoric out of the White House and GOP, purportedly stressing family values and compassionate conservatism, was little more than thinly veiled hate-mongering against Jews and African Americans. And after 9/11, Muslims began to take some of the heat, much to the relief of the welfare cheats and left-wing intellectuals, code words for blacks and Jews. When the real Nazis and folks, this echoes what I told you. I said, I was comfortable with being called a right-wing extremist when Clinton was in office, but when the real right-wing extremists got in the form of George Bush, then maybe I became a liberal. And Gordon Duff says, when the real Nazis moved into the mainstream of the Republican Party, the groups formerly labeled extremists by the FBI became not only acceptable but close allies of both the Bureau and the extra-constitutional police organizations like the Department of Homeland Security. During the Clinton administration, the FBI infiltrated and prosecuted these groups. Under Bush, they were above the law. Thus, violent extremists moving into mainstream politics are repackaged as dominionist, neocons, Christian, Zionists. The skinhead organizations fade away except for the fact that they had now become useful. With all members now internet only, anyone could claim to be anything with impunity. Without Nazis, there was no need for the groups of the ADL and JDL. Now let's move on a little bit. I've just put up a film up on Blog TV of Gordon Duff talking, and the last time Gordon Duff was on my show, he mentioned Michael Harari. Michael Harari was operating in Libya. Michael Harari operates all over the world because Michael Harari is the Mossad organizational chief. Some title like that. Organizational chief, higher up in the Mossad, Michael Harari. I exposed Michael Harari almost 25 years ago. Back in the late 80s or early 90s. I got a hold of documentation and tracked it down all the way to Walpole State Prison. I tracked my sources down, and I confirmed that the information given by Colonel Edward P. Catolo about the operation that was running side by side with Iran-Contra, headed up by CIA Director George Bush, who sponsored Iran-Contra. They were also involved in Operation Watchtower. Colonel Catolo blew the whistle. That information I put in a motorcycle magazine called Riders Exchange almost 25 years ago. George Bush, drugs, and murder. Because everybody that had held that document, everybody that had seen that document, everybody that had been given that document was either in prison or dead. I blew the whistle in my magazine, in one of the last Free Americans that I did. I brought the story up of Colonel Catolo, William Tyree, whose wife was murdered and he was framed for the murder and put in prison the same way that Edgar Steele has, to keep him quiet. Now, the same thing has just been done to Edgar Steele. And just like Gordon Call, somebody has been shot. Jerry and Joe Kane were shot and executed without a trial, the same way this Jose Garano, right here in Tucson, was executed, shot 60 times for walking out of his bedroom with a rifle in his own home. 60 bullets fired into a house containing a wife and a child, a baby, a young child. I have been pretty upset about that. Edgar Steele, the lawyer for the damned, as he referred to himself, been on my show many times. Back when I was on World War shortwave with friends like Bill Cooper, the outrages of Ruby Ridge, Gordon Call, and Waco were still fresh in our minds. The militia, at least my New Mexico group, was organized and put together in the office of the governor, Gary Johnson. I was still stunned at the thought of my friend and regular guest Edgar Steele spending the rest of his life in prison because a judge had denied him a 3-day delay to fly in the expert witnesses who had provided testimony as to the tampering and editing of the tape recordings used to convict him. And now, it turns out that the lawyer that was working that was hired, that got over $120,000 from Edgar Steele's supporters, has been disbarred after he and the judge and the FBI were in on the framing of Edgar Steele. The lawyer for the damned, the lawyer that represented the Aryan Nation, the lawyer that represented the Christies, the family that had their family ripped apart by the Oregon Child Protective Services. And Edgar was targeted by an FBI informant that stole $50,000 worth of silver from him, so he couldn't afford the lawyer. His people still raised $120,000. The lawyer took the money. He took a lot of other money too, $100,000 here, $100,000 there, from various trusts and clients that he was representing. And when that was found out, but it was unrelated. The papers, the mainstream media that helped prosecute and paint the picture of Edgar Steele as being the bad guy, the villain, this lawyer walked away with $120,000. Edgar Steele got the rest of his life in prison, and the lawyer was disbarred. Now, what is happening right now? Now, Edgar Steele was on my show. Edgar Steele was targeted by the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law because of his activism and because of his outspoken criticism of Israel, of the Jewish control in America. Now, Veterans Today is exposing this whole control, the monitoring, these trolls that are coming in here. They're all sponsored by Israel. Why? Because Israel has basically, let me see if I can put this properly without exactly blowing your mind, but it's going to. Israel has nuclear weapons. Mordecai Vanunu told you that about the weapons. The Veterans Today is telling you about the mini nukes used to bring down Oklahoma City and 9/11 and the World Trade Center and Building Number 7. Veterans Today is exposing the fact that these nuclear devices were already planted in the buildings. And in this investigation, with a former member of the nuclear facilities in Russia, the nuclear operations in Russia, in the Soviet Union, he worked for them. He has identified Israel as being behind the Mossad, being behind the nuclear weapons, being behind 9/11, and the weapon, the missile has even been identified that went into the Pentagon. I blew the whistle on Operation Watchtower, which was the drug-running operation. I did this almost 25 years ago. George Bush was in charge of covering for the Mossad, for the Jews behind us. CIA members, former CIA members perhaps, are coming out and saying the politicians are bought off. They're covering for Israel. They're backing traitors in this country. We are at war. We are actually in a nuclear war because Chernobyl blown up. I mean, this is really getting to be a mind blower. Chernobyl was blown up, according to Russian intelligence, by a suitcase-style nuclear weapon that was smuggled into it and put underground beside the nuclear power plant. And likely the same things happened in Israel, in Japan. And in this book, over 10 years ago, I wrote about that operation, that kind of operation. This one going from Bimini to Turkey Point Nuclear Power Plant in Miami. I wrote about this in a fiction book. In this book, I wrote about the concentration camps and the death camps that they've got set up for us red list people. This was 10 years ago. And in Mystery Babylon, I tell you why the Jews, why the Mossad has come after Christian identity. I have told you about how they have attacked me for the last 10 years. And here's what we're finding out now. I've always wondered, why are they coming after me? I'm just an old biker from Texas. Yeah, I got a high IQ. Yeah, I read a lot. I read 1,000 words a minute. I got 90% comprehension. It's my one talent. I read all of the papers from all over the world, and I try to tell you what's happened. And I started that in a biker magazine. Actually, I started it in a country western magazine. Yeah, matter of fact, I do read the Jerusalem Post and Haaretz. Yes. And I have people that read for me and forward me articles out of them. Yes. And they are. Speak English or get the hell out of my room, most Keedy. I don't need it. Yeah, they send the trolls. See, the trolls are already coming in, wanting to call me an asshole because I'm talking about Israel. I'm talking about Israel here. I'm talking about a foreign country. I'm talking about somebody that the Zionists and the controllers of the Soviet Union, the communists in the Soviet Union, they drove the Jewish people out. They wouldn't let them immigrate to America. They wouldn't let them immigrate to England. They made them immigrate to Israel. They drove them down there. So this ain't about Jews. This is about the elite that drove the Jews down to Palestine and had them in Palestine, the same way they're using the Mexicans to invade us here, and the same way they're using the Muslims to invade you in Europe, you folks in Europe. It is the same all over. It is world domination. It is the new world order. It's not confined to regionalism. And folks, part of the deal is, Ayn Rand told you right, and it's been the authors, it's been the writers that have informed you. Alexander Solzhenitsyn was doing in Russia what I am doing here, and he was put in prison. He was put in a gulag. Someday, people in history will be talking about what I wrote about 10 years ago in Mystery Babylon. In Mystery Babylon, I've got the CIA and Mossad tied in, identified, confirmed, backed up, over and over again, that the CIA and the Mossad are the ones that are bringing the drugs in. The CIA and the Mossad are the cartel. The BATF is the one that's arming the cartels, and the CIA are the ones that's controlling the cartels. And it's all about the drugs. They want to keep marijuana illegal here. They want to keep hemp illegal here. So you have to buy all your hemp from China, so you don't grow it here. So the farmers are destroyed. This is a war against Americans. It's a world war. It's a new world order. It's happening. That's right. Everything said about if you say that I'm sorry, the Jews do want your money. And they're really good at it. Do I hate the Jews? No, I don't hate the Jews. I admire them. If us white boys had it together, we'd own the Federal Reserve. We all of the drugs would be legal. So nobody's going to go if any one of the real people that are have answers here that are running for president, they would abolish all the laws against victimless crime. We would give back all of the voting rights to 50 million people that have been arrested for the drugs the CIA was bringing in, the drugs that our troops are guarding over in Afghanistan. This book has all of that information in it. It's $20. It's $20. Yeah, I wrote the book. Yeah, I want to make something off of it. You're goddamn right I do. But there's more information in that book about the Christian identity, about this is a battle we've been fighting for 4,000 years. The Bible told you about it. And yeah, I'm fighting the New World Order. I've been fighting it. I'm not for global government. I am for local government. That's why I've done the Free American. That's why I've done to inform you as an individual. Not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as a conservative, not as a liberal. As a human being, as an American, as a Texan, as an Arizona. And I blew the whistle on the CIA bringing the drugs in. They brought them in. They flew them in. And I so happened. It just so happened that I know all of these people. I've known them all. I'm not involved in it. I'm not involved in it, but Barry Seal came into my living room, smoked a joint with me in Dallas, Texas. Terry Reid, that flew with Barry Seal to deliver a kilo of cocaine to Jeb and George Bush Jr., signed a copy of his book I got here for me. I met a veteran in Sturgis, South Dakota almost 25 years ago and got the information about Operation Watchtower that's in my book right now. That went into my magazine. And that's the first time I got threatened by the CIA. Yeah, I'm CIA Clay. We're going to let you live this time. We're going to let you live this time. Just don't do anything like that again. And when I came out with the story of 9/11, with the pre-placed explosives in the basement, somebody tried to kill me. Somebody tried to kill me. And the Free American was they tried to silence the Free American. They tried to silence the whole concept of Liberty Villages. They've tried to do all of that. They've tried to break every business that I have had. They've closed down my motorcycle industry, my motorcycle businesses. That whole story is linked up on my archives page. You can see. And yeah, they want to call me a conspiracy theorist. George Bush had me beat all to hell. He wants you to think he wants you to believe that a bunch of Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan somewhere got the U.S. Air Force. Yes, 9/11 was planned. It was basically a heightened version of Operation Northwoods. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let me hang on a second here. Let's do this. Let me see. Let me check all my times here. We got 29 minutes remaining here. Okay, and let's do this. We'll go here. And now the people, again, let me kind of stress this. The people we are talking about here, the Mossad, the banksters, the drug dealing, the drug cartels. It's the intelligence agencies are working for the banksters, and they want to destroy Americans. They want to make you into a criminal. So we got more Americans in prison right now than any other country in the world. And this is the plan for you.